Today I'm taking on the challenge of creating a tiny sculpture. I'm creating this piece for an upcoming art prize here in Australia, and the theme is based around the little things that make you happy. And something that makes me happy is my love of storytelling and books. But instead of sculpting just a book or a pile of books, I'm going to take inspiration from this painting I did last year. The sculpture cannot be more than 8 centimeters in any direction, which is very small, but I'm excited to try this all the same. I'm gonna head down to the studio and I will see you down there in just a moment. Okay, I've arrived at the studio, so let's get started. I'm literally just going to start with a lump of clay and start building from the torso up. I will likely end up building too high anyway, so I can just cut some away from the bottom of the sculpture once I've got all the pieces together. It'll also shrink when I fire it, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem. Apologies for the voiceover, by the way. This is a shared studio and I don't want to bother people too much with my camera chit chat. I'm not going to worry too much about this being too realistic because I'd rather it be cute and quirky more than lifelike. So for something like fabric folds, I'm not going to stress too much about them, which is good because I'm not so confident in that area, and trying to create it on a really small piece will probably cause too much stress, and I really want this piece to be about having fun. Initially the plan was to have her wearing a collared button-up shirt, so here I'm just cutting out a rough looking collar to go around her neck. I ended up changing this later in the video, which you'll see, so all this was kind of pointless, but I wanted to share it anyway since it's part of my process. Sometimes we just have to experiment and see what works. I always try to keep an open mind when I'm creating in case I need to make changes. Now I'm moving on to cutting out the books to stack on top of her neck. Silly me was rolling the clay out on the table without any newspaper underneath, so of course it stuck and ripped. I should know better. In fact, I do know better, but what can I say? Sometimes I do silly things. Remember earlier when I said I'm not so confident with creating fabric folds? Well, here's where it gets interesting. I'm trying to figure out how to create the arms, which I'm guessing is created by adding clay, and oh my goodness, what am I doing? At least it's giving me a good giggle. Clearly that is not working, so I decided to remove it and try it again. Oops, that was not meant to happen. Since adding clay didn't exactly work, this time I try carving into it and removing some to see if I can get it to a point where it looks like she has actual arms. Okay, this is already looking so much better. This was actually a really good learning curve for me. Fabric is one of those things that to me seems really difficult to create until you know what you're doing. And not just with clay, I've also found it to be the same with painting. So perhaps carving away rather than adding on is a better way to create drapery and folds. I will definitely test this on a future piece. It may even be a matter of doing a bit of both. If you have any knowledge in sculpting clothing, please leave your tips and recommendations in the comments. I'd love some advice on this. While I loved how it was looking at the front and back, from the side the arms were looking way too big and puffy. It was almost unnatural, so I started carving away some of the clay to reduce the size, and that really helped. I'm so glad I did that. I ended up making an extra book to go on top. While I'm sure it was fine with 4 books, I felt like it needed one more small book to go on top. Doing this really didn't help with the height issue though. As you can see, I'm about 10.5 centimeters, so I'll be chopping some off the bottom for sure. As I was working away at this, her torso was looking more and more like she was wearing a floppy jumper, and it was just giving me these cozy winter vibes. So it was at this point I decided to remove the collar and see how a scarf would look. I rolled out some clay, removed the collar, and put on the scarf. It wasn't long enough, so I added a little bit more, and it was looking a bit rough, so I cleaned it up. But here she is. I love her. She's so quirky and cute, and I can't wait to put color on her. Thank you for watching part 1 of this build. I honestly had so much fun bringing this quirky little character to life. It's actually made me want to create a whole series of them with different objects on their heads, so keep an eye out for that. I'm going to wrap this video up here though, because there's not much more I can do. I have to wait for her to dry, and then I'll put her in the kiln for the bisque firing. I will see you next week though for part 2, so be sure to stick around to see how she turns out. I hope you have the most amazing week, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.